You can have the most intricately laid out plans, but sometimes it just won't work out. Like our planned trip to the center of Mexico to discover more about Nahuatl.
Para distintas actividades económicas, la acuicultura, la producción de alimentos y especialmente.
However, thanks to my good friend and interpreter, translator, language tutor and blogger and language learner Saskia Lagamasino, we were able to learn a little bit about Nahuatl via Skype. Hello, Saskia.
Hey.
Great to talk to you. If you could just give a little introduction about yourself, first of all, and share with people listening who you are, where you're from, what languages you speak, that awful question that we all hate, how many languages you speak, and yeah, just a brief introduction about you.
First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Saskia Martino. I'm a Mexican language learner. I am currently a little bit of a suspended kind of language learner because of life getting in the way, but I love languages in general. I have always loved them.
I guess the reaction that maybe you're used to when you meet someone who sort of asks that question of, oh, what languages do you speak? And then you get to Nahuatl and they go, but you what? So could you just give an introduction to, first of all, am I saying it right? Nahuatl, right?
Nahuatl.
Could you just give an introduction to the language for someone who knows nothing?
Let's get this out of the way. There's no way you don't know anything about Nahuatl because it's there. I like to say that it's the actual Mexican language, but then I would be doing a disservice to all the other Mexican languages.
Although Spanish is very much the dominant language of Mexico, following the 2003 Law of Linguistic Rights, the Mexican government recognized 62 different national languages across the country.
Supposedly all of Mexico's languages are all official languages, but sadly, Nahuatl is not the language that most people speak in here. You could say that more people speak the Spanish natively, of course. But then you see that the communities that speak this natively feel like they have to abandon their own language to be part of modern society. And I think that is wrong.
Sadly, this feeling of needing to abandon native languages for the sake of social mobility is deeply rooted in Mexican culture, following over 300 years of Hispanicization of the region. Initially led by King Charles II of Spain in 1696, government after government pushed for greater emphasis for the use of Spanish in law, education and business, with speakers of native languages often being forbidden from speaking in public forums or in schools. In 1889, Antonio Garcia Cubas estimated that 38% of Mexicans spoke an indigenous language, down from 60% in 1820. By the end of the 20th century, this figure had fallen to just 6%. It wasn't until 2003 when the Mexican government amended their constitution and put in place that law, the Ley General de Derechos Lingüísticos de los Pueblos Indígenas, to help protect Mexico's multiple diverse and native languages. But how much this law can do to help revitalize the native languages remains to be seen. With Spanish-only speakers making up 92.7% of the population, native speakers can still find themselves segregated and discriminated against in a country where young learners see more of a future in learning French or English over a native language.
English is something that in Mexico we have to learn. It's part of the obligatory curricula. And that's the obvious. It's the language of the world. But then I think it is wrong, for example, that there are more schools that teach French as an optional language than now. It should be elevated to a position of more importance and value and given as an option to everybody who is interested in it, is interested in being a more involved person in their own society and their own history, I guess.
What was it like then finding resources and kind of collecting this bank of things to help you actually learn the language?
I'm not going to lie, it requires a lot of patience. Oddly enough, for a language that has that many speakers, it doesn't have that many resources that have been created for learners yet. Like a lot of the resource gathering that I have done with other languages, I have been able to do through the internet. Meanwhile, Nahuatl was more of a matter of asking people, hey, do you know anything about this language? Do you know any speakers? Have you found anything interesting about it? Even if these were people that do not speak this language.
This search for online resources has led Saskia to finding Nahuatl resources and speakers across the world, making contact with enthusiastic linguists who have made it their hobby to try and learn Nahuatl.
A lot of the wisdom, of the literature, of the culture of this country, it is wrong that I don't know this language. I think I should be part of the movement that is little by little learning and in the end learning about their country a little bit better. And I think that if enough interest is shown in learning Nahuatl and all the other Mexican languages, I'm not going to lie there, there will be a point at which this is so important, this is such a matter of continence, it will be much more accessible.
They can't ignore it, right? If people want
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
With learners around the world and, most prominently, the spread of migrant workers to the USA from the traditionally native language-speaking rural areas of Mexico, communities of Nahuatl speakers have even begun to grow in areas outside of Mexico, like New York and Los Angeles, which brings us back to us all knowing a word in Nahuatl.
Definitely everybody knows chocolate.
I think I know
Because,
that word.
yeah, everybody knows chocolate. It comes from the word chocolatl.
Is avocado one, or is that from Maya?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely one. It's it's actually it comes from aguacatl, which is actually the Spanish for aguacate.
Ah.
It changed from Nahuatl to Spanish to Portuguese, and the Portuguese is, I think, what the world knows as avocado.
Okay.
But I am afraid to say I do know the etymology for that, and it actually refers to a part of the male genitalia.
The male anatomy, shall we say?
Yeah.
I can imagine which part. Is that transference of that sort of TL sound at the end of a word becoming in Spanish that TE? Is that kind of a common theme of words that have come from
It is,
the language?
definitely.
Okay.
It's called Nahuatlismos, which is languages derived directly from Nahuatl.
And is there a particular word or phrase from the language that has personally stayed with you?
Yolotl.
Okay.
It means heart. It is very telling for me that Yolotl carries the significance, I guess you could say, of intention. It is sort of like in English saying that somebody is good-hearted. One of the things I love the most about Nahuatl, and one of the things that attracted me the most to Nahuatl poetry, is precisely the fact that all these words carry a different meaning in them, and hence different intentions, different nuance.
Oh, well, thank you so much. As always, how do I say thank you in Nahuatl?
Okay, I'm going to give it to you in two parts. Tlazo,
Klaso,
kamati.
kamati. Klaso,
Tlazo, kamati.
klaso, kamati.
Perfect.
Thank you
Tlazo,
so much.
kamati, wemiak.
A huge thank you to Saskia for working with us on this episode, and of course thank you to you for watching and listening. And if you're thinking, listening? What? Yes, there is a podcast sister episode to this episode, so be sure to check that out at the link in the description below. And as always, if you have a language story that you'd love to share, or you know someone that does, be sure to get in touch. There's links to that as well in the description. I'll see you next time, but for now, thank you. Bye. Turns out the exact etymology of the word chocolate isn't as smooth as a bar of dairy milk. Of course, we get the word chocolate in English today thanks to the Spanish, who started using it thanks to their exposure to the classic Nahuatl-speaking Aztecs. But that's where things get a little hazy. The exact etymology isn't known, but it could be from the word chicolatl, meaning beaten drink. Remember that chocolate at this stage wasn't great hunking chunks of Toblerone, but rather the beverage variety,